The Galactic Training Center buzzed with activity as recruits from dozens of species prepared for the most prestigious military academy in known space. Commander Zexhai, a towering Kralian with 4 arms and reflexes honed through centuries of combat, supervised the newest batch of cadets. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lights as his compound eyes swept across the training floor. Among the usual suspects stood something unusual. A human. Marcus Chun had somehow managed to secure admission to the academy despite his species' recent introduction to galactic society. The other recruits gave him a wide berth, their various appendages twitching with what could generously be called skepticism. Zexhai had heard the stories about humans during the brief contact wars. Stubborn, aggressive, and surprisingly difficult to kill. But looking at this specimen, he saw nothing impressive. The human stood barely 6 feet tall, possessed only 2 arms and 2 eyes, and moved with what appeared to be sluggish, deliberate motions compared to the lightning-quick gestures of his fellow recruits. The Kralian commander clicked his mandibles in amusement. This would be educational for everyone involved. "Attention, recruits," Zexhai's voice boomed across the training hall. "Today we begin reflex training. Those of you who cannot demonstrate adequate response times will be dismissed from the program immediately." A ripple of nervous energy passed through the assembled cadets. The Vector twins began their characteristic synchronized breathing, their naturally enhanced nervous systems already preparing for optimal performance. A young Xian started limbering up his 12 flexible limbs, each capable of independent reaction. Even the sole quantum-touched recruit began shifting between dimensions, testing her ability to phase between realities at will. The human just stood there, hands at his sides, looking almost bored. Zexhai approached Marcus with predatory grace. "Human Shun, I trust you understand the importance of this exercise. In combat, a slow reaction means death." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied evenly, meeting the commander's compound gaze without flinching. "Excellent. You'll be pleased to know that I've decided to personally oversee your evaluation." Zexhai's mandibles curved upward in what passed for a smile among his species. "I train under Master Crix himself. My reaction time has been measured at 0.003 seconds. I have never missed a target in over 400 years of service." The other recruits formed a loose circle, sensing the electricity in the air. This wasn't going to be a standard evaluation. This was going to be a demonstration, with the human as the unfortunate example. The training arena reconfigured itself as Zexhai input commands into his wrist device. Holographic targets materialized throughout the space, some stationary, others moving in complex patterns. Energy weapons rose from hidden compartments in the floor, their targeting systems humming to life. "The exercise is simple," Zexhai announced, loud enough for all recruits to hear. "Avoid being tagged by the training weapons while attempting to hit targets throughout the arena. Points are awarded for successful hits and deducted for taking damage. The exercise ends when all targets are eliminated or the participant is incapacitated." He turned to Marcus with obvious disdain. "Given your species' limitations, I've programmed the weapons to fire at reduced power. We wouldn't want to seriously injure you in front of your fellow recruits." A few snickers echoed from the watching cadets. The Xian recruit made a comment about humans being better suited for menial labor than military service. The Vector twins exchanged knowing looks that suggested they'd already written off the human entirely. Marcus stepped into the arena without hesitation. "Ready when you are, sir." Zexhai activated the program with barely concealed glee. Immediately, the arena erupted into chaos. Energy bolts crisscrossed the space in brilliant streams of light. Targets popped up and disappeared with bewildering speed. The air filled with the whine of charging weapons and the sharp crack of energy discharge. What happened next will be discussed in military academies for generations to come. The human moved like liquid lightning. Where the other species relied on enhanced biology or technological augmentation, Marcus seemed to operate on pure instinct and prediction. He didn't just react to the weapon's fire. He anticipated it, moving into positions that wouldn't be under threat until seconds later. A volley of energy bolts streaked toward his position. Instead of dodging away like any sensible being, Marcus dove forward, rolling beneath the salvo and coming up firing at 3 targets simultaneously. Each shot found its mark with surgical precision. Zexai's confidence wavered for the first time in decades. The human's movements defied logic. No creature should be able to process information that quickly with such a primitive nervous system. The arena's AI, designed to challenge the galaxy's most elite warriors, began adapting its patterns. Weapons fired from unpredictable angles. Targets appeared and vanished in microsecond intervals. The difficulty ramped up beyond what any normal cadet could handle. Marcus adapted faster than the machine. He bounced off walls, slid under energy barriers, and somehow managed to be in 12 places at once without ever actually being hit. His weapon never seemed to miss, tagging targets that appeared behind him without even turning around. It was as if he could see the future. The other recruits had gone silent. Even the Vector twins, known for their emotional control, stood with their mouths hanging open. This wasn't just good reflexes. This was something beyond their understanding. Zexai found himself focusing entirely on the human's performance, his 4 arms moving frantically over the control interface as he tried to create a challenge that could overwhelm the seemingly impossible creature in his arena. He increased the weapon count. He accelerated the target sequences. He even engaged the arena's most advanced difficulty setting, something normally reserved for seasoned veterans. Marcus handled it all with the casual ease of someone taking a morning stroll. His breathing remained steady. His movements flowed with an efficiency that bordered on artistic. When the final target disintegrated under his precise fire, he stood in the center of the arena without a single mark on his uniform. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. Zexai stared at his displays, running the numbers again and again. According to his instruments, the human had achieved an average reaction time of 0.001 seconds. That was impossible. The fastest recorded time by any known species was 0.002 seconds, achieved by a quantum-touched warrior in perfect conditions. Marcus holstered his training weapon and looked up at the commander. "Sir, was that satisfactory?" Zexai felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: doubt. Everything he thought he knew about human limitations had just been shattered. This single human had not only met the challenge, but had done so while making it look effortless. The implications were staggering. If one human could perform at this level, what were the rest of them capable of? How had the galaxy so thoroughly underestimated this species? As Marcus walked calmly out of the arena, Zexai realized that his carefully planned demonstration had backfired spectacularly. Instead of showing the other recruits the futility of competing with superior beings, he had just proven that perhaps the most dangerous species in the galaxy had been hiding in plain sight. The human paused at the arena's edge and looked back. "Thank you for the opportunity, sir. When we start the real training?" Real training? What exactly had he gotten himself into? Word of Marcus Chin's performance spread through the academy like wildfire. Within hours, instructors from every department had requested access to his training records. The footage of his arena run had been analyzed frame by frame, with each viewing revealing new impossibilities. Dr. Silthera, the Academy's chief xenobiologist, cornered Zexai in the officers' mess hall. Her serpentine form coiled with obvious agitation as she thrust a data tablet toward him. "Commander, these readings cannot be accurate," she hissed, her forked tongue tasting the air nervously. "According to your instruments, this human processed visual information faster than our most advanced AI systems. His neural pathways would have to operate at quantum speeds." Zexai studied the data while picking at his protein paste. The numbers were indeed extraordinary, but he had witnessed the performance firsthand. Perhaps our understanding of human biology is incomplete. Incomplete. Dr. Silthera's scales shifted to an alarmed orange. "Commander, we've studied humans extensively since first contact. They're a young species with relatively simple neural architecture. Their brains are organic, carbon-based, and limited by the speed of electrochemical transmission. They cannot possibly process information faster than light. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of General Morduck, the Academy's commanding officer. The ancient hegemony veteran's mechanical limbs clicked against the floor as he approached their table. Half of his original body had been replaced with military-grade cybernetics after a devastating battle with the Void Seekers. "Gentlemen, lady," he rumbled, his artificial voice box adding metallic undertones to his words. "I trust you've both reviewed the Chun incident." "Sir, with respect, it was an incident," Zexhai replied carefully. "It was the most impressive display of reflexes I've ever witnessed." General Morduck's remaining organic eye fixed on the commander, which is precisely why it concerns me. I've received communication from High Command. They want to know how we've been hiding enhanced humans in our recruitment program. Enhanced, DR. Silthera's scales shifted to deep purple. "Sir, our medical scans show no augmentation. The human appears completely organic." "Then, explain to me how an unmodified biological entity outperformed our best training programs." The general's cybernetic hand crushed the edge of the table. "The Hegemony Council is asking questions I cannot answer." Meanwhile, in the recruit barracks, Marcus Chun had become an object of intense curiosity and not small amount of fear. His bunkmates gave him a wide berth, whispering among themselves in various alien languages. The Visian who had earlier mocked humans now avoided eye contact entirely. Only one recruit approached him directly. Kala Vexnine, one of the Vectar twins, settled into the bunk beside his with characteristic grace. Her species were known for their telepathic abilities and emotional perception, making them excellent diplomats and interrogators. "Your people are unusual," she said without preamble, her mental voice carrying overtones of genuine curiosity rather than hostility. Marcus looked up from the equipment manual he'd been reading. "How so? We felt nothing from you during the exercise," Kala continued, her large eyes reflecting the dormitory's dim lighting. "Most beings radiate fear, excitement, or aggression during combat training. You projected only calm focus." "I was focused," Marcus agreed. "The exercise required attention to detail." Kala's head tilted in a gesture that indicated confusion among her species. "But the speed at which you moved, the precision of your responses, my people have studied combat psychology for millennia. What you displayed should not be possible without significant emotional enhancement or technological assistance." Marcus set down his manual and considered her words carefully. Throughout his life, he had always been told he possessed exceptional reflexes. His instructors back on Earth had noted his unusual ability to anticipate opponents' moves in sparring matches. Military recruiters had fast-tracked his application to the Galactic Academy based on his test scores. But he had never considered himself extraordinary. On Earth, there were thousands of athletes, soldiers, and pilots who performed at similar levels. Video game players who could track dozens of fast-moving objects simultaneously. Martial artists who could counter attacks they couldn't possibly have seen coming. Fighter pilots who could process multiple threat assessments in milliseconds. "Perhaps," Marcus said slowly, "your studies haven't included enough human subjects." Before Kala could respond, the dormitory lights flashed twice, the signal for an emergency assembly. Recruits throughout the barracks began moving toward the central courtyard with military precision. General Morduck stood at the center of the courtyard, his imposing figure highlighted by spotlights. Behind him, a holographic display showed star charts marked with red warning indicators. "Recruits," his amplified voice carried across the assembled crowd. "Your training schedule has been accelerated. Long-range sensors have detected Void Seeker scout ships moving toward our outer territories. While this academy typically requires 6 months of preparation before field deployment, current circumstances demand immediate action." A ripple of anxiety passed through the gathered cadets. The Void Seekers were legendary for their aggression and technological superiority. They had been responsible for the destruction of 17 colonial worlds in the past century. Selected recruits will be assigned to active patrol vessels within 72 hours, the general continued. Combat readiness evaluations will begin immediately. Marcus felt a familiar sensation, the calm focus that seemed to activate whenever danger approached. Around him, other recruits displayed various signs of stress and preparation. The Decian began rapidly calculating probability matrices. The quantum-touched recruit flickered between dimensions. The Vector twins linked their minds for enhanced processing power. But Marcus simply waited, his mind already running through tactical scenarios and potential responses. He didn't realize that General Morduck's cybernetic eye was recording his every reaction, analyzing the human's unnaturally calm demeanor in the face of real combat deployment. In the command center, Zexhai watched the monitoring feeds with growing unease. While every other recruit showed elevated stress indicators, the human's biometrics remained absolutely stable. Heart rate steady, brain activity focused but not elevated, muscle tension within normal parameters. It was as if Marcus Chun had been born for combat. Dr. Silthera slithered up beside him, her scales now showing deep concern coloration. Commander, I've been analyzing the human's genetic sequences from his admission physical, and his DNA contains markers I've never seen before. Specifically, mutations in the genes controlling neural pathway efficiency and stress response regulation. It's as if his entire species has been naturally selected for combat situations. Zexhai turned to stare at her. Are you suggesting that humans are evolutionary warriors? I'm suggesting, Dr. Silthera replied grimly, that we may have severely underestimated exactly what kind of species we've invited into our military academy. As the recruits dispersed to prepare for their accelerated training, Marcus remained in the courtyard for a moment longer. Something about the general's announcement had triggered a memory. Stories his grandfather had told him about human soldiers in ancient wars, fighting against impossible odds, and, somehow, finding ways to win. Perhaps there was more to being human than he had ever realized. The thought should have been comforting, but, instead, it filled him with a strange sense of anticipation. Somewhere out there, an enemy was approaching, and, for the first time since arriving at the academy, Marcus Chun felt truly at home. The accelerated combat training pushed every recruit to their breaking point. What normally took months was compressed into intense 72-hour cycles of weapon drills, tactical simulations, and live-fire exercises. The Academy's medical bay worked around the clock, treating exhausted cadets from dozens of species. Everyone except Marcus Chun. While his fellow recruits stumbled through the corridors with fatigue-dulled reflexes and stim-pack dependency, the human seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. His performance in every exercise improved steadily, as if the pressure was refining rather than degrading his abilities. Commander Zexhai had stopped trying to challenge Marcus individually. Instead, he began incorporating the human into increasingly complex team exercises, hoping to find some limitation to exploit. The results were both fascinating and disturbing. During a hostage rescue simulation, Marcus somehow coordinated the movements of 6 different species without verbal communication. He seemed to instinctively understand each recruit's capabilities and limitations, positioning them for maximum effectiveness while compensating for their weaknesses. In ship-to-ship combat drills, he piloted assault fighters with a precision that made veteran instructors uncomfortable. His ability to predict enemy movement patterns bordered on precognitive, allowing him to engage multiple targets simultaneously while avoiding return fire. Most unsettling was his performance in the psychological warfare exercises. When subjected to advanced interrogation techniques that had broken seasoned warriors, Marcus simply waited. He showed no stress response to pain simulation, no emotional reaction to psychological manipulation, and no degradation of mental function under extreme pressure. Dr. Silthera had been conducting increasingly detailed biological scans throughout the training period. Her latest findings gathered the senior staff in an emergency session. "Gentlemen," she began, her scale showing the deep blue of profound concern, "I believe we are dealing with something unprecedented in galactic history. General Morduck leaned forward in his chair. Explain. The human's neural activity during combat situations shows patterns I've never encountered. His brain doesn't just process information quickly. It appears to enter a state where time perception itself is altered. During high-stress scenarios, his neural firing rate increases exponentially, but without the degradation we see in other species. She activated a holographic display showing comparative brain scans. Look at these readings. A Kralian warrior under combat stress shows neural activity in the standard range, elevated but controlled. A Vector twin demonstrates enhanced processing through their psychic link. Even a quantum-touched individual shows recognizable patterns. The display shifted to Marcus's scans. The human's brain activity during combat resembles nothing in our medical database. Neural pathways that should be physically incapable of such transmission speeds are operating at levels that challenge our understanding of organic computing. Zexai studied the impossible readings. Are you saying he's not entirely organic? That's just it. Every test confirms he's completely biological. No cybernetic enhancement, no genetic modification that we can detect. This appears to be natural human capability. Natural? General Morduck's cybernetic hand whirred as it clenched. Doctor, what you're describing would make humans the most formidable warrior species in known space. Dr. Silthera's scales shifted to an ominous dark green. Sir, I don't think Shun is exceptional among his people. I think he's normal. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If Marcus represented average human capability, then Earth possessed a military potential that dwarfed every other species in the galaxy combined. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Outer System Patrol. Void Seeker scouts had been detected moving in formation toward the Academy's location. The enemy had apparently decided that the military training facility represented too valuable a target to ignore. All recruits are to be evacuated immediately, General Morduck commanded. Prepare the emergency transport vessels. Sir, Zexai interjected. Respectfully, some of these recruits have already demonstrated combat readiness. Chun specifically has exceeded every performance benchmark. The general's organic eye fixed on the commander. Are you suggesting we deploy untested cadets against Void Seekers? I'm suggesting that some of our cadets might be more capable than we initially assumed. Before the general could respond, proximity alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The Void Seeker scouts had arrived ahead of schedule, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system with obvious hostile intent. In the recruit barracks, Marcus felt the familiar sensation of time seeming to slow around him. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red, and the controlled chaos of evacuation procedures filled the air with shouts and running footsteps. But his mind was already several steps ahead, calculating trajectories and threat assessments. Kala Vexnine appeared beside him, her telepathic abilities allowing her to move through the crowded corridors with supernatural grace. The instructors are preparing to evacuate us, she projected. I know, Marcus replied, securing his equipment with practiced efficiency. How many Void Seeker vessels? Kala paused, surprised by the question. Most recruits would be asking about evacuation procedures or safety protocols. 3 scout ships, according to the emergency broadcasts. What? Marcus finished his preparations and moved toward the armory. 3 scouts means a reconnaissance mission. They'll want to capture rather than destroy the facility. Where are you going? To get better weapons. Kala's telepathic senses detected something that made her pause. The human's emotional state wasn't fear or excitement. It was anticipation. He was looking forward to this encounter. The Academy's defense systems activated as the Void Seeker ships closed range. Energy shields flickered to life around the facility while automated weapon platforms emerged from concealed positions. The alien vessels responded with precise energy barges that began systematically dismantling the defenses. In the command center, General Morduck coordinated the evacuation while monitoring the enemy approach. The Void Seekers were methodical in their attack, suggesting they indeed planned to capture rather than destroy the facility. Sir, Zexai reported, we have a problem. Recruit Chun has armed himself and is requesting permission to engage the enemy. The general turned to stare at him. He's requesting what? Permission to engage. He's standing at Airlock 7 with a full combat loadout, waiting for orders. On the tactical display, the Void Seeker ships had begun launching boarding pods toward the Academy's docking bays. Standard protocol called for a fighting retreat to the evacuation vessels, buying time for non-combat personnel to escape. General Morduck made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his career. Grant the humans' request, but assign him a supervision team. Sir, I want to see what he's really capable of. 5 minutes later, Marcus Chen stepped through Airlock 7 into the vacuum of space, propelled by a standard-issue maneuvering pack toward the nearest Void Seeker boarding pod. Behind him, a team of 3 veteran instructors followed with the intention of keeping the human recruit from getting himself killed. What they witnessed instead was the birth of a legend. Marcus didn't just intercept the boarding pod, he dismantled it, moving through zero gravity with an intuitive understanding of physics and momentum that should have taken years to develop. He systematically disabled the pod's propulsion, weapons, and life support systems before the enemy troops inside even realized they were under attack. When the pod's emergency airlocks opened and Void Seeker warriors emerged in their distinctive combat armor, Marcus was waiting for them. The battle that followed lasted exactly 47 seconds. When it was over, 6 of the galaxy's most feared warriors were either unconscious or incapacitated, and Marcus was examining their equipment with professional interest. Command, Zexhi's voice crackled over the communication system. The human has successfully neutralized the first boarding party. Successfully neutralized? General Morduck's voice carried obvious disbelief. Sir, he took them all alive. I think he wants to interrogate them. In the silence that followed, every being in the command center came to the same realization. They weren't just dealing with an exceptional recruit. They were watching the emergence of something that would reshape galactic military thinking. And there were still 2 more Void Seeker ships approaching. The captured Void Seekers proved to be a treasure trove of tactical information, though extracting it required methods that made the Academy staff profoundly uncomfortable. Marcus didn't resort to torture or psychological manipulation. Instead, he simply talked to them. Within an hour, he had convinced 3 of the warriors to reveal their mission parameters, ship configurations, and the location of their primary fleet. The interrogation technique appeared to involve nothing more than respectful conversation and strategic sharing of information about human military philosophy. Ow! Dr. Silthera asked, reviewing the recordings. Void Seekers are conditioned from birth to resist interrogation. Their pain tolerance exceeds most species' lethal thresholds. Marcus looked up from the tactical display he'd been studying. They weren't afraid of pain or death. They were curious about humans. Curious? Their leadership has been monitoring galactic communications since our first contact. They know something about us that made them specifically target this academy. Marcus highlighted several data points on the display. This wasn't a random raid. They came here looking for human recruits. General Morduck's cybernetic components whirred as he processed this information. Are you suggesting they see humans as a threat? I'm suggesting they see us as potential assets. The Void Seekers have built their entire military doctrine around recruiting the most effective warriors from conquered species. They don't destroy civilizations. They absorb them. The implications were staggering. If the Void Seekers had identified humans as superior warriors, it meant they would continue targeting human populations until they either recruited them or eliminated them entirely. Sir, Zexhi interrupted. The remaining 2 scout ships are requesting communication. Put them through. The main display activated, revealing a Void Seeker commander whose scarred features spoke of countless battles. His translation device rendered his words in perfect galactic standard. Academy personnel, I am War Leader Gaxthor of the Crimson Talon Fleet. You have captured members of my scouting force. General Morduck stepped forward. This is General Morduck, commanding officer of this facility. Your forces attacked a neutral military academy. By galactic law, you are in violation of laws are for the weak, Gaxthor interrupted. I offer you a choice. Surrender the human recruit who defeated my warriors, and I will spare your facility." The command center fell silent. Every eye turned to Marcus, who stood studying the alien commander with analytical interest. "And if we refuse?" the general asked. "Then I will take him by force and reduce your academy to cosmic dust." Marcus stepped toward the communication array. "War leader Gaxthor, I'm a human you're looking for." The alien's eyes narrowed. "You're younger than I expected, but the reports of your capabilities intrigue me. My warriors spoke of fighting techniques they had never encountered." "Your warriors are skilled," Marcus replied respectfully, "but they relied too heavily on individual prowess. Humans fight differently." "Explain." Marcus glanced at General Morduck, who nodded permission to continue. "We don't just train warriors. We train warriors who can make other warriors better. Every human learns to fight as part of a larger whole." Gaxthor's scarred face showed genuine interest. "You speak of pack tactics. Many species employ such methods." "Not like humans," Marcus said quietly. "We've been practicing warfare for thousands of years on a planet where everything was trying to kill us. We didn't become the dominant species because we were the strongest or fastest. We became dominant because we learned to make weaknesses into strengths and turn enemies into allies." The war leader's eyes glittered with predatory hunger. "Demonstrate." What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists for centuries. Instead of accepting a direct challenge, Marcus did something unprecedented. He invited the Void Seekers to participate in a joint training exercise. "Your forces are skilled in individual combat," he explained, "but I suspect they've never faced coordinated resistance from mixed-species teams. Let me show you what human military philosophy can accomplish when applied to existing galactic warfare doctrine." Gaxthor's laugh rumbled across the communication system. "You propose to teach us how to fight. I propose to show you how humans think about warfare. If your goal is to recruit effective warriors, you should understand what makes us effective." Against every instinct and regulation, General Morduck found himself authorizing the most insane military demonstration in galactic history. The Academy's training facilities were reconfigured to allow Void Seeker warriors to participate in live exercises alongside Academy recruits. The results defied every prediction. Marcus began by pairing each Void Seeker with 2 Academy recruits, creating mixed-species teams that should have been chaotic disasters. Instead, he somehow managed to identify complementary abilities and communication methods that allowed natural enemies to function as cohesive units. The Kralian recruits' four-armed fighting style perfectly complemented Void Seeker's armored assault techniques. The Vectar twins' telepathic abilities allowed her to coordinate with alien warriors who spoke no common language. Even a nervous Thesien found himself providing tactical analysis that helped Void Seeker commanders adapt to unfamiliar combat scenarios. But the most remarkable transformation occurred in the Void Seekers themselves. These warriors, conditioned from birth to view other species as inferior, began demonstrating unprecedented levels of cooperation and tactical flexibility. "How is this possible?" Dr. Silthera whispered, watching Void Seeker veterans take tactical advice from Academy recruits half their age. Marcus overheard her question. "Humans have a saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We've always known that diverse teams perform better than homogeneous ones, but most species never learn to leverage that diversity effectively." The training exercise culminated in a simulated battle between 2 mixed-species teams. On one side, traditional Void Seeker assault tactics, supported by Academy recruits following standard galactic military doctrine. On the other side, a human-coordinated team using integrated combat philosophy. The human-coordinated team didn't just win. They achieved objectives that the simulation parameters had classified as impossible. War leader Gaxthor stood in stunned silence as his most elite warriors shook hands with Academy recruits, discussing tactical innovations that had emerged during the exercise. His entire worldview had been systematically dismantled and rebuilt in the span of 6 hours. "Human Marcus Chun," he said finally, My species has conquered 17 civilizations. We have absorbed their warriors, their technologies, their knowledge. But we have never encountered anything like your people. Marcus nodded respectfully. Different doesn't mean superior, war leader. It just means we have different perspectives to offer. Indeed, Gaxthor paused, weighing his next words carefully. The Crimson Talon fleet has standing orders to recruit exceptional warriors through conquest. But I find myself reluctant to destroy something so unique. General Morduck seized the opening. Perhaps there's an alternative to conquest. Speak. An exchange program. Your warriors train with our academy. Our graduates serve tours with your fleet. Both civilizations benefit from shared knowledge. The war leader's scarred features showed surprise. You would trust us with your most valuable military asset? Marcus stepped forward. War leader, the most valuable military asset humans possess isn't our reflexes or our tactics. It's our ability to turn enemies into friends. Given enough time, I think you'll find that alliance is more profitable than conquest. Gaxthor stared at the young human for a long moment, then threw back his head and laughed with genuine mirth. Either you are the greatest fool in the galaxy, or the most dangerous warrior I have ever encountered. Maybe both, Marcus replied with a slight smile. As the Void Seeker ships prepared to depart with the first exchange students, Dr. Silthera pulled Marcus aside. Do you realize what you've just accomplished? Marcus looked puzzled. We prevented a war and established a diplomatic relationship with a hostile species. Standard conflict resolution. Standard. Dr. Silthera's scales had shifted to a color she'd never displayed before, something between wonder and terror. Marcus, you just convinced the galaxy's most aggressive military force to abandon conquest in favor of cooperation. In 6 hours, the human shrugged. Humans are good at making friends. As he walked away to prepare for the next phase of training, Dr. Silthera realized that the galaxy's understanding of human capabilities had only begun to scratch the surface. If Marcus Chun was truly representative of his species' potential, then everything was about to change. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for that change. 6 months later, the Galactic Training Center had been transformed beyond recognition. What had once been a traditional military academy had evolved into something unprecedented. The first truly integrated multi-species warfare institute in galactic history. Commander Zexhai stood in his office, reviewing reports that read like science fiction. Void Seeker warriors were teaching advanced assault techniques to hegemony recruits. Vector telepaths were developing new communication protocols with species that had been mortal enemies for centuries. The Academy's combat effectiveness ratings had increased by 300% across all measured parameters. And at the center of it all was Marcus Chun, now graduated and holding the rank of lieutenant despite having less field experience than any officer in galactic military history. Sir, Zexhai Zaid announced, Lieutenant Chun is here for his final evaluation. Marcus entered the office with the same calm confidence he displayed since his first day at the Academy. His uniform bore insignia from a dozen different military traditions, honors bestowed by grateful species whose warriors had benefited from human military philosophy. Lieutenant, Zexhai began, your final scores are unprecedented. Marcus waited respectfully for the commander to continue. Perfect marks in tactical analysis, weapons proficiency, leadership evaluation, and multicultural integration. Your combat simulation scores exceed our measurement parameters. Zexhai paused, studying the human carefully. But I have one final test. The office's walls transformed into a holographic environment, showing a star system under attack. Multiple fleets from various hostile species were converging on a civilian colony world. Traditional analysis indicated the situation was hopeless. No conceivable military force could protect the planet against such overwhelming odds. Lieutenant Chun, you have been assigned command of a mixed-species rescue fleet. Your forces are outnumbered 50-1. Enemy vessels include Void Seeker assault ships, Crystalline Entity dreadnoughts, and Phantom Fleet stealth destroyers. Standard military doctrine classifies this scenario as unwinnable. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind automatically processing thousands of variables. Ship capabilities, crew compositions, enemy movement patterns, civilian evacuation requirements, and available resources all factored into his analysis. After 2 minutes of silence, he looked up at HFY. Sir, may I modify the scenario parameters? Explain. The scenario assumes that all enemy forces are committed to hostility. Human military philosophy suggests that assumption is flawed. HFY's mandibles clicked with interest. Continue. Marcus manipulated the holographic display, highlighting specific enemy formations. The Void Seekers are here for recruitment, not destruction. The crystalline entities need raw materials, not territory. The Phantom Fleet operates as mercenaries, and each group has different objectives. More importantly, each group has different values that humans can appeal to. Marcus began sketching tactical movements that looked nothing like conventional military doctrine. Instead of fighting 3 separate enemies, we create a situation where they compete with each other for resources while we evacuate the civilians. What followed was the most complex diplomatic military operation ever conceived. Instead of engaging the enemy fleets directly, Marcus's strategy involved simultaneous negotiations with all 3 hostile forces while conducting precision strikes designed to redirect their attention toward each other. The Void Seekers were offered intelligence about exceptional warriors among the crystalline entities in exchange for safe passage for civilian transports. The crystalline entities were provided with detailed analysis of Phantom Fleet technology that could be harvested after the mercenaries were defeated. The Phantom Fleet was given contracts to capture Void Seeker vessels that contained valuable military intelligence. Within 4 hours of simulation time, the 3 enemy fleets were so busy fighting each other that they completely ignored the civilian evacuation. Not a single colony ship was lost, and the human rescue fleet suffered 0 casualties. HFY stared at the results in silence. According to the simulation, Lieutenant Shun had achieved a perfect victory without firing a single shot at enemy targets. Lieutenant, in 400 years of military service, I have never seen anything like this. Thank you, sir. That wasn't necessarily a compliment, HFY said carefully. What you've demonstrated suggests that humans don't think about warfare the same way as any other species. Marcus nodded. Humans learned early that the best way to win a fight is to avoid having one. But if you must fight, then making your enemies fight each other is more efficient than fighting them yourself. And if they refuse to fight each other, then you give them reasons to work with you instead of against you. Humans are very good at finding common ground. Dr. Silthera's voice interrupted from the office's communication system. Commander, we're receiving an urgent transmission from Earth. The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Sarah Chun, Marcus's commanding officer from Earth Defense Command. The family resemblance was unmistakable, though the Admiral's features carried the weathered look of someone who had seen serious combat. Commander HFY, I'm Admiral Chun. I understand my nephew has been causing quite a stir at your academy. HFY's compound eyes widened. Admiral, your nephew has revolutionized our understanding of military strategy. Admiral Chun smiled with obvious pride. Marcus always was exceptional, even by human standards. But I'm not calling about his academic performance. The display expanded to show star charts marking the positions of multiple hostile fleets throughout the galaxy. We've been monitoring communications from every major military power. Word of human combat philosophy has spread faster than we anticipated. Sir, Commander, every species in the galaxy is either requesting human military advisors or mobilizing to preemptively attack Earth. The Hegemony Council has classified humans as a Level 7 strategic threat. Marcus stepped forward. Aunt Sarah, how many species have requested advisors? 47 at last count, including former enemies of the Hegemony. Marcus, they're not just asking for tactical consultation. They're requesting full integration of human military philosophy into their existing command structures. HFY felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. If 47 species were restructuring their militaries around human doctrine, the balance of galactic power was about to shift dramatically. And the hostile responses? Admiral Chen's expression hardened. 15 species have formed the Coalition for Galactic Stability. Their publicly stated goal is to contain human influence before it destabilizes existing power structures. How long before they move against Earth? Marcus asked with characteristic calm. Intelligence suggests 6 months, possibly less. They're concerned that delaying action will allow us to convert more species to human military methods. General Morduck's voice crackled through the communication system. Admiral Chun, this is General Morduck. On behalf of the Galactic Training Center, I want to offer Earth our full support. Appreciated, General. But Earth has a different proposal. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Oh, we're establishing the Human Military Advisory Corps. Volunteers from Earth Defense Command will be assigned to any species requesting assistance. Our goal is to demonstrate that human military philosophy benefits everyone, not just humans. Admiral Chen's image focused on Marcus directly. Lieutenant, you're being offered command of the first Advisory Corps deployment. 47 species, 15 potential hostile contacts, and approximately 6 months to prove that humans represent progress rather than threat. Marcus considered the assignment. Leading a diplomatic military mission involving nearly a quarter of known galactic civilizations while preventing a war that could devastate countless worlds. The scope was unprecedented, the stakes impossible to calculate, and the probability of success difficult to determine. In other words, it was exactly the kind of challenge humans had been preparing for since they first learned to turn rivals into allies. I accept, he said simply. Zexhai watched as the young human prepared to take on responsibilities that would have overwhelmed seasoned galactic leaders. Lieutenant, you realize you're essentially attempting to reshape galactic civilization? Marcus paused at the office door. Commander, humans don't reshape civilizations. We just help them become better versions of themselves. As the door closed behind him, Zexhai turned to Dr. Silthera's image on the communication display. Doctor, your final assessment of human military capabilities? Dr. Silthera's scales had settled into a deep, contemplative blue. Commander, I don't think we've been studying a military species at all. What do you mean? I think we've been studying a species of natural diplomats who happen to be exceptionally good at warfare when necessary. The difference is significant. Zexhai pondered this as he watched Marcus through the office window, already surrounded by volunteers from every species at the Academy. Void Seeker warriors stood beside hegemony officers. Crystalline entity representatives conversed with Phantom Fleet operatives. Natural enemies working together as if it were the most normal thing in the galaxy. Perhaps that was exactly what humans brought to the galaxy. The ability to make the impossible seem normal. And if Marcus Chun was any indication, the galaxy was about to discover just how normal the impossible could become when guided by human hands. The real test was just beginning.